What is going on, guys? So you decided to join the army and you are just curious, in the unlikely event that you quit, fail, or get injured at basic training, what the heck happens? So I just got back from my run today, and I was thinking about a video to do and whatnot. And recently I made a video about the only way to fail basic training, and that is to quit. And if you haven't watched that video, I'll link it up here somewhere or in the description or whatever, so check here or here and in the description if you want to check out how to fail, in which I really just talked about saying that you quit basic training. That's really the only way to fail. But in this case, in this video, I want to talk about what happens if you quit. What happens if you get hurt also? So that's another thing, because you could get sent home if you get hurt. But what actually happens? And I'm gonna tell you guys right now, don't quit. Do not quit basic training, especially if you're wanting to quit just so you can go home, right? If you're wanting to quit basic training because you're like, oh, I miss home, I want to go home, that's probably the worst reason ever to quit basic training. You want to know why? You're not going to go home. It's not like, all right, I'm at basic training, it's been a week or so, I really hate it, and I miss my family, and I miss, my wife and my kids, if you have a wife and kids, or I miss my boyfriend, I miss my girlfriend, I want to go home. Drill sergeant, I quit, I'm done, right? And you think the drill sergeant's going to be like, yeah, sure, all right, we'll ship you up, put you on a bus or a plane and send you home. That's not how it works. The thing that they actually try to do, right, if you quit at basic training, they will literally basically make sure that you do not leave basic training until your class that you were there with graduates basic training, right? It'll be a really rare occasion that you might leave, a week or so before, but if you quit, if you just decide, oh, you want to up and quit at basic training, you're going to stay there longer than the guys that you're with. Now, another thing I want to talk about is if you quit at reception, you will also not leave for a while. Now, sometimes you will stay there for, let's say, a minimum of, I don't know, 3 to 4 weeks or so. But even at reception, you're still going to stay there for a long time. And if you watch my reception video, especially if you're going to 30th AG and you don't have your phone and you don't have all this stuff and you're doing duties and all that stuff, like, you don't want to stay at reception. Like, I would rather stay at basic training for 8 weeks than stay at reception for 4 weeks, like half the time. I would so much rather do that, because reception at 30th AG at Fort Benning was just horrible. I really hated it. Now, let's say at reception you decide to quit, right off the bat. There was people that did that for us, right? There was people that quit at reception. There was a guy who tried to kill himself at reception just so we could go home, and that happens, right? So at reception, if you quit, you become a holdover, and that's kind of just a term at basic training and reception. A holdover is basically when you quit, you get injured, or you're basically in processing to leave, or you are, you're just injured and you're waiting, until your injury is healed. Like maybe you broke your ankle or something, you're waiting, right? So what holdovers do is they're in a training environment. So you're either at reception or you're gonna be at like basic training, and you're gonna basically wake up and clean all day long, right? So you're not going to be doing any training. You're not going to be really doing anything at all aside from cleaning. So at reception, I remember when we were there were these guys who were holdovers. They had these like weird patches and stuff on their arms, and I was like, oh, who are these guys? They look like they've been here for a while, like they know what's going on. I didn't know that they were all quitters. So I actually like kind of looked at them, was like asking them for advice and stuff like that. But later on, I found out that they all basically were quitters. So they basically just, every day I was at reception, you just see them out mowing the grass, picking up trash, doing stuff like that. I don't know, sweeping around. And that's really all you do when you're a holdover, and you'll do that for weeks or even months in some people's cases. Some people were even at reception and basic training for over a year, right? So it is possible to quit, get hurt, you know, have your papers in processing. I don't know what the heck that means sometimes, because sometimes in processing just takes 2 seconds, and then sometimes it literally will take people a year to sign your paper. And that's mainly just because the military and people, they really look down on you quitting, right? So if you have a battalion commander or whatever the officer level is that signs off on all these, you know, papers to, you know, kick you out of the Army, they're really not in any rush. They're looking at you like, oh, these guys are a bunch of quitters, you know, we can just use them, they're gonna be cleaning up stuff, you know. I'm really in no rush to sign these papers to get them, you know, kicked out of the Army. And I've been told that that's kind of what they do. They just really just let the papers stack up, and then eventually one day they just decide to sign the papers, and, you know, then those people are kicked out. And, you know, it could have been just one day, but like I said before, you are going to wait as a holdover for a long time if you decide to quit. Now at basic training, if you quit, like I said, you're going to be there until your company graduates. You are going to be there longer than the guys that you are originally with. Now what happens if you get injured, right? So there's really 2 cases, and in this scenario I'm talking about at basic training, kind of at reception too, but we'll just apply this to basic training. There's really 2 cases that applies if you get injured, right? It kind of depends on the severity of your injury. So let's say you're at basic training and you tweak your ankle or you hurt your shoulder or something like that, and you are no longer able to do your physical activities and duties of the daily routines at basic training. You will then become a holdover. You'll get recycled, right? So I don't know if I talked about this before in my past videos, but especially this is your first video, I'll go ahead and explain it. So getting recycled at basic training basically just means that your company is going on a little timeline, right? So you're doing these things, you know, red phase, white phase, blue phase, and if you get recycled, it means you are going back to another point in time in the cycle with another company, right? So you won't end up staying with your company the whole time. So whenever you guys are going throughout basic training, you will notice that there will be holdovers that end up, you know, they might come to your platoon, they might come to your company or whatever, and these are guys who have been recycled back to your cycle. So a basic training session is called a cycle. So they will be recycled back to you, and I've said cycle like 50,000 times, but that's pretty much what happens, right? That's one of the ways you can get recycled. The other way is basically if you do something bad, right? So you can, I don't know, try and, let's say you steal something at the PX, right? So you steal something at the PX, you're going to get basically fined and get extra duty and stuff like that, and you could also possibly get recycled back to another unit. Now, if you fail every single event at basic training, you might get recycled back to another company, so that's a possibility. But the other scenario for a more major injury is you're basically going to be sent home to come back to basic training at a later date. This happened in my platoon personally. At the final FTX, there was this guy, it was, you know, after doing some rucking and stuff like that, he was complaining about his hips, right? So one of the things you do not want to complain about is your hips. If you go to sick call and you tell them your hip is hurting, you know, they're going to do an x-ray and an MRI or whatever the heck they do, and if they see little minor fractures or anything, it could be like barely even nothing where you would be fine. Don't complain about your hips, because like this guy, he was sent home for I think 6 months, and after 6 months he was supposed to come back and start basic training all over again, right? So that's a scenario. If you have a major injury, you could be sent home for X amount of days, months, or whatever, and then come back to basic training to start over. The other thing, the final possibility of getting injured, is if for some reason your papers are in processing. Again, this has happened. If you get injured, you will just be a holdover for as long as that injury is over. So like, let's say you like majorly fracture your arm and, you know, the bone was sticking out or something like that. if your papers just happen to be in processing for the entirety of that time, you could be stuck as a holdover at basic training for, I don't know, 8 months or something. So it could be a ridiculous amount of time. Yes, you get paid for all of that time, and it's not fun though, right? So you're getting paid, but you're gonna be cleaning and doing bullcrap stuff, and it's just not fun. And finally, the only way really that I know of that you can be sent home from basic training basically within the week of you wanting to is really one scenario, and you do not want to do this scenario, guys. You do not want to do this, but it's happened multiple times, right? And that is basically trying to kill yourself and or just being a danger to everybody around you, right? So if you're a danger to everybody around you, you're trying to kill yourself like every single night. Every single chance you get, you're trying to kill yourself. Every single chance you get, you're trying to run away. Every single chance you get, you're just starting fights and doing all this stuff because you want to get out. You're gonna get out, right? They're not gonna keep you around for very long. You could get sent home like 2 days after, you know, this major event that you did has happened. You know, maybe you've tried to kill yourself like freaking 3 times, and after that they're like, all right, well, this dude clearly is freaking going crazy right now, so we got to send him home. And what happens after that is pretty horrible, right? So you could get a dishonorable discharge from the military, which just ruins your life, right? You're not going to be able to really get a job anywhere. You might be having to get paid under the table for like the rest of your life if you get a dishonorable discharge. It's pretty freaking bad. You could also get a failure to adapt, which is more of a mild thing, and that may not happen if you are suicidal. And all this stuff goes on your record, guys. So let's say you try to kill yourself at basic training, and you guys might think it's crazy that I'm talking about trying to kill yourself, but it happened multiple times. At reception, dude drank laundry detergent until he was throwing up blood. And I remember I was on my fire guard shift, and this guy was throwing up blood because he tried to essentially kill himself by chugging like an entire big bottle of laundry detergent, which is a basic, it's not a basic acid because acid is whatever, but you know, it's a basic chemical, and your body, and it just throws off your body's, you know, chemical balance. And you know, he was throwing up blood. So it happened at reception. Multiple guys tried to kill themselves, and I don't want to say this to scare you. I think these people honestly were semi weak-minded. I don't want to say that in a bad way, but I just don't understand when people try to kill themselves, especially for something as not difficult as basic training. But anyway, so killing yourself goes on. If you try to kill yourself, it's going to go on your record. If you run away a whole bunch of times and you get a dishonorable discharge and you start a whole bunch of fights, these things go on your record. And you might think, oh, I'm just going to go home and everything's going to be fine. That's really not how it is. These things are going to be on your record. If you go try to get a job and they do a background check, it's going to come up, and you're going to wish that you had just stuck it out at basic training and, you know, just did what you had to do to get it over with, finish out your first contract, and be like, peace out, I'm going to get my DD-214 and never think about the military ever again. So that is what happens if you quit, fail, or get injured, or basically try to kill yourself at basic training. That's pretty much what happens to you. All of those scenarios, you don't want to do it. You want to not quit. You don't want to quit. You want to do your as best as you can to pass all of the courses and all that stuff so that you don't get recycled. Now you can get recycled. That doesn't mean you have failed basic training. It just means, you know, you might need a little bit extra time at the range or something like that because you couldn't qualify or whatever. But you're still going to graduate basic training. Getting injured, you know, you could be sent home or you could be held as a holdover. And if you try to kill yourself, and that is just, please don't do that, guys. It's really not that bad. You know, the training environment, TRADOC, it sucks a lot worse than the regular Army. Just remember that when you're going through it. So those are basically the 4 scenarios that I talked about in this video. So yeah, make sure you encourage your friends whenever you go to basic training. Hopefully this doesn't apply to any of you guys, but when you're around people, when you get to basic training, when you get to reception, make sure you try to encourage your battle buddies and stuff, you know, to keep pushing forward. All the ones who are wanting to quit and do all that stuff, try to encourage them, you know, not to do it, not to quit, not to, you know, give up. and just keep pushing forward, because like I said, basic training is only a certain amount of weeks. It's a finite number of days. It's not going to last forever. So keep that in mind, and make sure you remind your battle buddies who seem to have a rough time. So this video goes out to them, I guess. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, like the video. If you have any questions, comment them down below. Subscribe if you want to come back for more. I'm trying to post these videos as much as I can before I leave next week for a while. So yeah, hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys later.